Hello, and welcome to another episode of Disrupt Your Now. This is the show for entrepreneurs who are ready to shake things up. If you are sick and tired of checking off the boxes, this show is for you, and especially with our guest tonight, Richard Fenton, who wrote, you've probably heard of Go for No, and now their newest book, When They Say No. Richard, you have shaken your life up so many times. You checked the boxes in the beginning, and then you
Yay.
decided you didn't like those boxes, and you started creating your own, right?
Absolutely. I was very much in the corporate route,
Mhm.
from the age of 16 to 41, so a good solid 25 years. And when my now wife and business partner, Andrea, and I met, we had one of these moments where we said, why are we doing this within the company? Why don't we go do it outside on our own?
Mhm.
And she was naive enough to trust me. And I was naive enough to think that it might work, and it did. It did. We've so now we're 25 years as entrepreneurs, running our own business and writing books and doing a lot of speaking and traveling, and it's been a wonderful life.
Yeah, y'all have built an amazing empire. Before we get into that, I want you to tell the audience a bit about your background and how you got to where you are leading up to the corporate world.
Sure. Well, in high school, I got a job bussing tables in a restaurant, and very quickly moved up to assistant manager and then manager. And it was kind of interesting because at the age of 17, I was running two restaurants, and I had no business doing that. It was all pure the appearance of confidence and force of will.
Okay.
And after that, I don't want to say it was a mistake, but I will say it was a complete change in direction. I made the decision at the age of 20 to go to work for my father
Hmm.
in the automotive fleet business. And just to set the stage, my father was the number one seller of General Motors product in their history on the
Wow.
fleet side of the business. No one else was even remotely close. And I went to work for him, um, clearly in his shadow. I mean,
Mhm.
there was just no doubt that he possessed a natural sales ability that I was never going to have. I mean, he could
Mhm.
start a conversation with anyone, anywhere, anytime about anything. He didn't need a sales training program. He didn't need steps. He just did it. It was
He just was a
natural for him.
natural. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that regard, I was not my father's son. I needed the steps. I needed process. If somebody that said something, I needed to know what to say back. If they threw out an objection, I had to have some idea of answering it.
Mhm.
And my father couldn't understand it. He was such a natural. He could not help me.
Right.
He had no ability to say, well, Rich, here's step one, here's step two, here's step three. He didn't know what the steps were.
Hmm.
He just started conversations with people and just sold cars. And so I made the decision to quit the car business for that reason. So in 1980, I packed up my Chevy Chevette with a couple suitcases of clothes and a quadraphonic stereo system at big at the time,
Yeah, it
and
was.
and drove all the way to California to get as far away from my father's sales legend shadow as I could possibly get.
Yeah.
And interestingly, when I got to California, the first job I took was in sales. After having proven that I wasn't very good at it, I then took a job in sales.
That's
Uh,
funny.
but this time I took a job in retail, because in the world of retail selling, I thought, well, I won't have to pick up the phone. I
Yeah.
don't have to cold call on people. I don't have to start conversations with strangers. People will drive to the mall, park their car, walk into my store. They'll tell me what they want, and I'll go get it. I
Yeah.
thought, how hard could that be?
Like an order taker.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be an order taker. Um, the term I use is I was a retriever. Literally, you told me what you wanted, and I would run and get it, and I would bring it back. I would retrieve it for you. But as far as selling goes,
Mhm.
I was failing again, and you can imagine my discouragement when I realized that the problems that I had in Chicago had nothing to do with Chicago or the car business or my father.
Mhm.
It was me. I was going to take this. in my case, fear of failure and rejection and my inability to sell with me wherever I went.
Yeah.
And I knew something was going to have to change. And I had the very good fortune of meeting a man who was the district manager at this company. His name was Harold. And he watched me sell. And instead of just brushing it off and saying, oh, that kid's going to fail, that kid's no good, Harold watched me sell, and he came up and he asked me this really interesting question, which is the core of our book, Go for No. He said, Richard, what did that last customer say no to? And I said, what are you talking about? Were you not watching the sale I just had? That man bought a suit, sport coat, slacks, shirts, ties, shoes, socks, belts, underwear. I started running through the whole list of everything the man had purchased. And Harold said, whoa, stop. He goes, I didn't ask you what he said yes to. He said, yes is always the easy part of any sales interaction. You just look at the sales check and everything that's on there is what they said yes to. Because the question I'm asking you is, what did he say no to? And when I stopped being defensive and I ran the sale through my mind, I realized that the customer hadn't said no to anything. Every single thing I showed that man, he said yes to. And I said, Harold, he didn't say no to anything. And then Harold asked me the other really great question. He said, well, how did you know he was done shopping?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you how I knew he was done shopping. I was 25 years old. I wasn't making very much money at the time. I had never gone into a menswear store in my life and spent over $1,000 on clothing on myself.
That was a lot of money back then.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I ever spent over $300 or $400. So $1,000 was an outrageous amount of money. $1,000 was like my spending limit. And the idea that someone might walk in and want to buy $2,000 worth of clothes or $5,000 or $10,000 was so far outside of my consciousness that I hadn't even considered it. And I said, Harold, I guess I'm the one who stopped the sale. He goes, exactly. And he said, you know where that customer is right now? I said, no, sir. Where is he? He said, he's at the other end of the mall, spending the rest of the money you wouldn't let him spend with us.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he said the final words, which saved the whole situation. He said, he goes, I watched you and you're not half bad, kid. He said, but your fear of the word no is going to kill you. But I think if you could just get over that, he said, I think you're going to be one of the great ones.
Wow.
And I went home that night questioning everything. I mean, I thought my role was to get people to say yes to me. That's what I thought my job was. And here's a man who's telling me that I need to hear the word no more often. And he completely turned what I thought my function was upside down. And I thought, is it actually possible that this guy is right? Is it possible that my job is actually to fail my way to success, to show more products or services and have people reject me more and let the yeses happen when they happen? Just take the pressure off. It's okay if you hear the word no. You're not doing anything wrong. You're actually doing something right. You're in action. You're creating opportunities for sales. And I went in the next day with the express goal of failing my way to success. I decided I was going to increase the number of times I heard the word no on the job. And I will just tell you, Lisa, it worked. I mean, it didn't work overnight. I mean, I didn't become an award-winning salesperson immediately. It took a whole year. But a year later, here I was an award-winning salesperson for that company, all because one person stopped to let me know that the model of failure and success that I was operating with was screwed up. I thought what most people think. Yes is over here. No is over here. My job is to move toward yes and to avoid no.
Yeah.
Well, Harold made me understand that that was just the wrong model. I'm over here. No is in the middle and yes is on the far end. No is not something you avoid. It's something you move through. And that if you seek no more often and you get good at handling those no's, then the yeses will happen in your life. To say it was life-changing for me would be a misstatement by a large part. But it was also changed the lives of many people. I used that concept in the clothing company. I used it when I moved to Lens Crafters, which is where I met my wife and business partner, Andrea. Then we launched our own company, and now we work with hundreds of companies doing one simple thing. This is all we do, is we help people understand that yes and no are not opposites. They're opposite sides of the same coin. It's a package deal. And if you want more yeses in your life, then you better get more comfortable. You better get comfortable with hearing no more often. And if you do, it's that simple.
You know, Richard, and you already said it just using a different word, what a watershed moment that somebody took the time to explain what to them was this simple concept. And it not only changed your life, but it changed all these people's lives after it. And you have this entire career built basically on that one conversation. And when you think about it from that angle, it gives me chill bumps. Is that man still around today? Or did
I
he
did.
get to see you build this business? And
I know that he's aware of it. We did not talk after we launched the business. I did talk to him during my time with other companies.
yeah,
So he knew he had an impact on me and my career, but I don't know that he ever got to see the end final product. Um,
I was
and it
just
is sometimes, you know, we work with companies, we tell the managers there, you know, why don't you be a herald? You know, that was his name, Harold. Why don't you go be Harold? I mean, can you be a herald in somebody else's life? It's not that hard if you take the time. And a lot of people will say, well, that was his job to improve your sales. I don't know. I don't think a lot of people would have taken the time. I think a lot of them would say, that kid sucks. Forget
yeah.
it. You know, Tom, fire that kid if his sales get any worse. And that would have been the end of that. But he decided to take a different route, and I will be forever grateful.
That is so. I just love that story, and you know, I read Go for No back all those. Gosh, it must have been around 2003, or I don't remember when it was that I first worked with y'all,
Right.
and right after the book came out, and I read that book, and I have read it so many times, and I've learned so much from it, and that's why I keep going back and reading it over and over, and that's why I love also when they say no. So look, y'all, if you have not read Go for No, you have to go get it and read it. And if you have read it, you have to get this. But either way, you have to get this. It's such a great book. And I want to talk with you about entrepreneurs because a lot of times people who are self employed or own their own business think, I don't need to know how to sell. They may even be a solopreneur, but they think, I'm not a salesperson. I do whatever it is I do. You know, I make this or whatever. And they don't understand that regardless of whether they are actually the one selling, everybody has to sell in order to survive. Can we talk about that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, this is kind of a very interesting thing in that if you watch movies and there's like this genre of movie where there's the starving artist
Yeah.
and he or she, they live in the third floor of a concrete loft in a desolate area of a, you know, downtown city. And they go up their little metal elevator and they get up there and they're creating these beautiful works of art and they're struggling. And why are they struggling? They're struggling because they realize that they don't realize, I should say, that they are only doing half of what is required to be successful. Creating something as an artist
Yeah.
requires that you have to somehow take that creation to market. It's the same thing if you're going to be an author, if you've written a book, and if you hear any of the stories of people, you know, like J.K. Rowling or Dr. Seuss or any of these people, you know, they got rejected 10, 20, 30, 50 times by different publishers telling them that their work was no good, that they were never going to make it in this business. And, you know, if you only have half the equation, which is creating the goods, as an entrepreneur, because I'm separating that from like somebody who's a salesperson who works for a company.
Yeah.
You know, you're working for a company and they make washer dryers and your job is to go out and sell them. Well, you're not creating the washer dryers.
Right.
You're not connected to the creation process. But if you're an artist, right? If you're somebody, you know, if you're somebody like that, if you've written a screenplay in Hollywood, well, you know, that's hard. It's harder to sell a screenplay in Hollywood than it is to hit a major league fastball. I mean, it's almost impossible. So if you want to break through, you have to do one of two things. You're either going to have to learn how to sell / be persistent, or you're going to have to buddy up with somebody and get a front man or front woman who is going to be the person who's going to be out there selling for you, because you don't want to create. And if you think of that as like an art, for example, how many artists, they have to go to galleries. They have to sell the gallery owner on what it is that they've created. The gallery owner then gets bought into this artist because they love the art. Well, that is selling. And it's so funny because like an artist will say, oh yeah, I don't want to have to deal with customers, and all I have to do is go to the galleries and sell and get the owner to take my art. Well, they are selling.
That's right.
Your customer is the gallery owner. If you want to make a movie, your customer is the studio. Whatever it happens to be, whatever you're creating, you've got to somehow get that to market. And so everyone's selling all the time. Parents are selling when they're trying to get their kids to eat their spinach. Andrea and I went to a restaurant not too long ago, special night. We walk in, they say, here's your table. They walk us all the way in the back and they sit us down in the back wall against the service station with this door that was swinging open and closed. It kept hitting my chair. And I sat down. 2 minutes in, I went, oh man, this is not going to work. And I look across the way and I see this table in the window for two, and called the server over and said, hey, this is a very special night for us. We really would like to sit in that table in the window. And she says, oh, I'm sorry, that's reserved. And I said, yeah, I understand. I'm sure somebody really wants to sit in that table, but I would really like to sit in that table. We would really like to sit in that table. So could you go see what you can do? So, she huffed away and then she came back and she said, come with me. And we were sitting at the table. Now, it would be so easy to just say, oh, okay, that's someone else gets that.
Yeah.
Right. But no, why not you? Now, some people would argue and say, oh, you were just asking. Right. Well, asking is selling. That's what it is. You explain your situation, you show your product or service, you explain the features and benefits and why they should buy, and then you ask them to buy it. And a lot of people complicate it and they think that selling is a profession and everything else is something else. We're selling all the time.
Yeah, and you got your no and you kept going until you got your yes.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I think one big problem that entrepreneurs have, and again, speaking from people like consultants, web designers, whoever, people that don't have a sales staff working for them, is like you said about the suits. We have in our mind how much we think something is worth, and we forget that might not be in line. A lot of times people are so worried that they're going to charge too much, and what they end up doing is scaring away the really good clients.
Sure.
Because they're not charging enough.
That's an interesting story too, because when Andrea and I first launched our business, we went 5 months without a customer and we had 6 months worth of money. So it was a little scary. And we finally got a phone call. We sent out the worst, most horrible brochures in the history of entrepreneurship. They were just ugly. I mean, it was photocopied stuff I made in Microsoft Word, and we folded it and I scored it with one of these little scoring tools. Yeah. I mean, it was just, we were on such a budget, and we mailed them off these companies. Suddenly we get a phone call. The phone call was from the Limited, one of the biggest companies there is. And this young lady says, hey, we see you have a recruiting program. Do you have that program, on video? And we said, oh, no, we don't have it on video. We're pretty new. She goes, well, do you have it written out that we can review it and everything? I said, no, we don't really have it written out. We're kind of new. And she says, well, do you have like an outline of it that you could send us? And I said, we're kind of new. And she says, do you have business cards? I said, we're really new.
Oh, no.
And she says, okay. She goes, could you type up something that I can show my boss? Because I have to have something. We said, yes. We typed up an outline. We sent it to her. She calls back a few days later and we get hired.
That's amazing. So what was it in that terrible, awful brochure that got her attention so much that she was able to go that far through, even not having a business card, but still believing in y'all?
Well, that's an interesting question, and you know what? Nobody ever asks that. So congratulations.
Oh,
You're homing in on the point here. Um, our brochure was really bad, but the title of the program was a solution to a problem they had.
okay.
They had a problem in that they couldn't hire top performers. They were having trouble filling positions. And in that time, actually, unemployment was really, really low. So everybody was desperate to try to find help. So recruiting people away from other companies was an important task. And our program was called Systematic Recruiting: How to Hire Top Performers Away from Your Competitors. And that,
And who
our
wouldn't want
program,
to do that, right?
right. Right. And so the fact that we didn't have a great brochure and it didn't explain how we helped them do that,
Mhm.
um, they were desperate enough for the product that they wanted to know more about our solution.
Uh-huh.
And that's a really important thing, because sometimes we think that people say no to us just because we're not selling well, or we're not good at what we do.
Yeah. Or we're too
No.
small.
Yeah.
A lot of people think it's because my company's so small.
Yeah, wrong. It's just sometimes it's the wrong product for the wrong customer at the wrong price at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is, a lot of times it has nothing to do with you. If you've got a solution to someone's problem, they will oftentimes buy what you have, even if your promotional materials aren't very good. Uh, and there's a saying here, and I've so fully embraced this. The saying is, if you're not embarrassed by your early marketing efforts, then you waited too long to start.
I'm horrified to look back at mine from the
Oh,
90s.
oh, geez. I cringe at some of the stuff that we did early on. It is literally cringeworthy. And yet we started and we made the calls, and some people said yes. And
And the limited, man, that especially then was a huge deal. But that is such a great point, though. Your title, what you focused on was the problem and the solution. You were not focusing on you and Andrea and what y'all do and how y'all do it. Almost everybody talks about me, me, me. I do this, I do that. This is how I do it. And everybody's going to sleep because they're like, yeah, I don't care. What can you do for me?
that's right. It's always got to be about the prospect, and it's always got to be about how your product or service is going to make their condition better. How are you going to change their condition? And the end of that story, though, is so they hired me to do 9 of these workshops across the country,
Okay.
traveled all over the United States, finished the last one, and the president of the company walked up and he put his arm around me and he said, "Hey, nice job." I said, "Thank you, sir." He says, "I got a little feedback for you, though." I thought, oh boy, here it comes. What did I do? And he says, increase your fees. He said, you charge so little, we almost didn't hire you because we thought, what could we get for that price?
Yes.
And I came back from New York, told Andrea what he said, and we immediately increased our fees by 75%. In those days, we were charging $2,000 to do a half-day workshop.
Oh, wow.
We thought that was an outrageously high amount of money.
Uh-huh.
And so a week after we got our first client, we raised our fee to 3,500, and nobody blinked. I don't think that ever got in the way. And then we increased it to 5,000 and 7,500. And the point being here is that every time you change your price, you also change, you'll lose some clients,
Yeah.
but you'll get new clients who didn't hire you before because they thought you were too low.
Right.
And no one ever thinks that. They don't realize that. And let's face it, if you do half as much work for twice the fee,
Yeah.
that's a better deal,
Heck yeah.
because it leaves you time to create new products, to do more art, to write more books, to start new companies, whatever it is. And there's no doubt in my mind that selling premium products to higher income, higher net worth individuals or companies is the only way to go, because anytime you're competing on price, you're in a race to the bottom.
Right.
You're in a race to the bottom. You got the next person there, and they come back. Oh, well, the other guy drops $200. What about you guys? Can you go down 500? And now you got this race to the bottom.
Mhm.
You got to get out of that. You
Yeah,
got to
and
get
there
out of
is
that.
always somebody willing to do it for less. So,
Always.
yeah, you cannot make a living or run a business like that.
Yeah, you can't out Walmart.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
just it's just not going to work.
For sure. Well, I was reading When They Say No, and there's so many good stories in here. And now I can't remember. There were a couple last night that I was like, wait, okay, all right. Here's one that let's talk about. No rarely means never,
Right.
because that that goes along with go for no, because the more no's you get. But let's talk about that. Where and in this, you use the story of the little girl asking for the dog. But do you um, let, what do you want to say about that? So
Yeah. And you said little girl asking for what?
the dog,
Oh, the
Laura.
dog.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the dog, our friend Laura. Um, Laura is a perfect example. So I'll tell that story. She desperately wanted a dog when she was young, and she went to her parents and she said, "I want a dog," and they said no. And she goes, "I really want a dog," and they said no. And she goes, "But no, I want a dog." They said, "Laura, you can't have a dog. You won't take care of it." Okay, the answer is no. So she kept at him and kept at him and kept at him. And then finally, they take her to see the dog. She sees the dog. She goes home and, she's all disappointed because they didn't buy the dog. And she's pouting now and she's really angry. And the next morning, her mother comes in and says, "Laura, get up. It's time to go to school." And she goes, "Yeah, but what about the dog?" And, of course, in the end, she gets the dog.
Yeah.
And the moral of that story for a lot of people is, oh, you have to be a spoiled brat to get what you want. I don't think that's the point. The point
Yeah.
is, if you know what you want, you're going to have to ask for it. And you're going to have to ask more than once. And you're going to probably have to ask 3, 4, or 5 times, because 5 is the magic number.
Mhm.
5 is the magic number in the world of sales. Now, it's going to be a little different in different situations. Sometimes it's 2 and sometimes it's 10, but it averages about 5. And what's interesting is that 44% of all people will give up after they ask for a sale one time.
Once,
They
yeah.
ask somebody to buy what they've got and they hear a no, and 44% of people quit there. They never go back to that person.
Mhm.
22% more give up when they get a second no. 14% more give up when they get the third no. 12% more give up when they get the fourth no. And this means that 92% of all people have given up trying to sell whatever it is to somebody after getting 4 no's. And yet all the research shows that 92% of all customers say no 5 times before they finally say yes. And so, well, geez, this doesn't take rocket science here to
Just keep
realize.
asking.
Yeah, that every time you continue asking, most of the competition is falling away because
I
they
think
stop calling.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, and I'm going to include myself in this a lot of times, we feel like, well, I don't want to bug them. I don't want to, you feel like, oh, they're going to think I'm desperate or whatever. So, what kind of advice do you have for people like that,
Um,
especially entrepreneurs, not regular salespeople, but entrepreneurs?
who are afraid of looking like they're
Yeah,
pushy.
yeah, or pushy, or desperate, or anything like that.
Yeah, well, I think this is the key thing here is that you have to make a decision um, who you're serving here.
Hmm.
Whenever you're trying to sell something, whether it's a refrigerator or whether you're trying to you're trying to sell a screenplay or whatever it happens to be, whatever it happens, a SaaS product, doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
If you go into the sales situation and you think that you're being pushy and you're going to quit because you're afraid that you're looking like you're being pushy, then my question is, well, who are you serving?
Yeah.
If you were serving yourself,
That's true. Yeah.
you were saying, I don't want to look like I'm self-serving.
Hmm.
I don't want to look like I'm selfish. Well,
That's being selfish.
it is. So why would you go into a sales situation focused on yourself? You should
Yeah.
be focused on the other person. You
That's
should
such
be
a great
focused
point.
on their needs. You
Hmm.
should say to yourself, to not sell this person, is a
A disservice.
thank you. I was looking for that word. To not sell this person is a disservice to them by definition.
Yeah.
Andrea and I went in to get these glasses. As a matter of fact, we went into a optical store here in Orlando. I sat down, they took the measurements, they did everything. And I have eyeglass, background. So does Andrea. That's where we met. We met when we worked at LensCrafters. And we're sitting there and Andrea's with me. And then the young lady says, do you want anti-reflective coating? And, I said, how much is it? And she says, it's $80. And I said, nah, it's okay. I don't need it. And she goes, okay. And then she starts to move on. And Andrea goes, wait. So now Andrea jumps in. She goes, wait. She goes, you do a lot of podcasts. We've got the ring light on. You need the anti-reflective lenses. And I went, oh, you're right. I do. I said, yeah, I'll take it. So now the salesperson was ready to move on. Why?
Andrea did her job for her.
Andrea was doing the salesperson's job for her. And there's a main reason for this. And there's probably maybe two reasons. One, Andrea knew my needs.
Yeah.
Andrea knew what I did for a living. Andrea knew that I did podcasts. If this salesperson had asked me any questions early in the process, so, what do you do for a living? Are these glasses for business or just for home? Are you using them for reading? Are you, do you use them for driving? If she had asked any of those questions, which she did not, then she would have been able to come back when she said, would you like to get the anti-reflective coating? They're great for when you're doing podcasts. I would have said, oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. See, it was her job to have asked the questions and she didn't. And she backed off because she felt that if she asked again, I'm telling you, I know this because I know salespeople, I know myself. She was like, I don't want to look like I'm pushing.
Right.
So she's like, I asked him. He said no. End of story.
Yeah.
That was completely a mishandling. And had I walked out of there with the wrong glasses, this podcast wouldn't be as good. And I would have been angry that I didn't get the right glasses. And so, if you're selling in your own best interest, then it feels like you're being pushy. When you're selling in somebody else's best interest and that you're helping them make the right decision, then you should be able to ask the same question 2 or 3 times, maybe. You want the anti-reflective coating? No. Are you sure it would be really good for your podcast? No, I don't think I need it. Sir, I have to tell you, I've dealt with a lot of customers and they always are thankful when I talk them into it. I really think you should get it. I mean, whose interest is that in? Yeah. Yes, it's in her best interest. She makes the commission, but it's also in mine.
Also in your best
So
interest.
just always focus on the other person's needs and then you'll never really be pushy.
I had never done sales until we started our first business in 1990. I was an accountant before that. And I just, sales just gave me the heebie-jeebies, never had any interest, because you think of the snake oil salesman. To me, sales was getting people to buy something they didn't want. That was what I thought sales was.
Sure.
And then when we started our first business, I knew that we had a great service to offer. And I genuinely felt like I owed it to these companies to let them know. So it was really, really easy for me to do the sales, and I realized I loved it. But the other thing is I wasn't selling me or my service like a service that I provide personally, like not consulting or anything. This was a B2B service, but it wasn't like a personal thing, but it was so easy. And I figured out on my own, this is easy because I feel like I owe it to them to tell them.
Right. There's a lot of people who think that selling is something you do to people. And it's not. It's something you do for people.
Yeah.
And if you are being manipulative, and if you are going to trick somebody into buying a product or a service that is wrong for them, and you're lying about the fact that it's, you're telling, this is going to be great for you. You're going to get a lot of value from this. And darn well you're not, then you're not doing it for them. You're doing it to them. And that is the reason that we have the horrible image of selling, is because we've all had people do it to us. We've all had situations where we were forced to make a decision that we were unsure about. And then we got the thing home, or we signed up for the service. And then, it was nothing like what we thought it was. And we got angry over the fact that we got railroaded into making this bad decision. And so consciously or subconsciously, we make the decision, I will never get pressured into making a fast decision again. I'm never going to, I'm just going to always take my time. I will always walk out, right? I will always, let's say, let me think about it, and I'll leave so I can think about it, because I don't want to make a mistake. Well, if that's the way you feel as a customer, it's also the way you're going to feel as a salesperson.
Yeah.
You're going to think, I don't want to be the person who does that to people. So don't be the person who does that to people. Be the person who asks great questions, determines whether the product or service is a fit. And then if it is, tell them that they should buy it. And if it isn't, tell them they shouldn't.
Right. And tell them they shouldn't and why they shouldn't. And maybe even tell them where they should go or what they should get if what you have to offer isn't what you think is the best for them.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you another funny little story. I'm shopping at a place called the Fresh Market.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a Whole Foods, right? And and I walk up to the deli counter and I said, I want to get a pound of the macaroni salad. And he says, do you? And I thought it was a funny thing to say. I said, yeah, I'd like to get a pound of macaroni salad. He says, he goes, you want to try it first? I said, it's macaroni salad. Why would I want it? Why would I want just, I'm like, what thing? He says, try it. So he takes a little scoop on a little tiny spoon. He hands me the thing. I put it in my mouth and I went, I don't want the macaroni salad. He says, I know. He goes, it's just horrible.
That's so funny.
And I said, that was wonderful service. And he says, yes. And he goes, that's why I was a great bartender and I could never sell cars for a living.
Oh, funny.
He said, because I only will do what the customer wants. Yeah. So a week later, I go in there and I said, hey, how you doing? Remember me? Yeah, macaroni man. We're laughing, right? And I said, I want to get the meatloaf today. He says, yeah. He goes, I would get that meatloaf too if there wasn't a meatloaf behind me in the wall that was $2 less and about 25% bigger. I said, oh, okay. This guy has earned my loyalty forever. I will buy whatever it is that he tells me to get. And the next time I go in and I want the $10 item, he tells me to get the $20 item, I will just take it.
Yeah, because he's earned your trust.
Exactly. And so, I mean, selling can be as fun and rewarding and honest as you want it to be. And if your whole idea is that you have to manipulate people, then you don't get it yet.
When I was reading your book, I was reminded of something that happened to me and my husband back in it was probably 86, 87, that I had totally forgotten about. This was like the worst salesperson I've ever been around. And it was timeshare of all things. And we only went because my cousin was one of the people that booked appointments and she would get paid X amount if we showed up. The salesman was horrid. And of course, he's like, you got to make up your mind today. You can't leave, the whole spiel. So we finally get out of there and we're in the parking lot and he comes out to leave and he sees us and he's out there yelling at us in the parking lot and being like really sarcastic and making fun of us. And I was just like, you are crazy. I had totally forgotten about that. But that guy, I'm like, I wonder whatever happened to him because I cannot imagine him ever making a living in sales.
Yeah, and I hate to say this, but in certain businesses like timeshare and like automotive sales, although the automotive dealerships have gotten much better, they're far more customer centric now. And they're far more worried about the repeat business with a customer. There are certain situations where the person almost has to be manipulative and hard sell if they're going to survive in that environment, because they're never going to get you to sit through that timeshare presentation again.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to get.
I got that part. It was the attack in the parking lot. I was like, you were psycho.
Yeah, well, that's beyond the pale, and obviously that's somebody who's unhinged, and that's the type of selling that I don't think I could ever survive in. Yeah, just like the guy who said I'm a good bartender, but I wouldn't sell cars very well for a living. I couldn't because I would be far too honest. Yeah. And there's a whole industry, just for example, a little side note, whole industry that's grown up around getting out of your timeshares. There's actually law
I
firms.
know, I hear those commercials all the time.
I know. And so, I mean, why is that? And the answer is because so many people have been pressured into buying a timeshare where they didn't fully understand it.
Yep.
They didn't get the fact that these service charges, these annual fees were going to go up as rapidly as they do. They got excited in the moment. And so I would never take him off the hook, but I would also say that those are the worst kind of sales as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and they used to, back in the 90s, I don't know if they still do it, when we were still living in Florida, they would do these things where you'd get a free trip to the Bahamas, and all you had to do was go to this sit through this one thing. And I'm like, anybody that goes to that, if you think, why are they giving you this trip? It's got to be worth that amount for them, for you to sit there. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's funny, but not to dog on the timeshare people.
Yeah, I know.
There was another story in here where you talked about, I don't think you said the company or the kind of company, but when he called you up to speak and you said, yeah, this is like whatever, I had got no like 17 times or whatever.
Right.
Tell the audience about that, because I thought that was really a great anecdote.
Yeah, well, I can tell you the company, doesn't matter. It was Discovery Channel.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and we had been sending brochures and making calls to this gentleman, Frank, who was the vice president of stores. And, we went after him for over 3 years. And eventually, one day he gets a brochure that we sent and hey, I saw your program. I really like this. Want to hire you guys, So, he flies me in. And I'm ready to go up, and he says, well, listen, everybody, we got Richard here today, and Richard's going to talk about selling and about Go for No. And, I had this brochure come across my desk the other day, and I knew instantly this was the perfect program for our company, and you're all going to, enjoy it. So here's Richard. Well, this is not what I recommend most people do when they start a sale. Start a speech. But, I got up behind the podium and I said, hey, everybody, don't mean to embarrass Frank or whatever, but I want to be clear that you understand this. This was not the first time we sent a brochure to Frank. This was the 17th time over 3 years that we've either tried to get a hold of him, called him, left messages, sent brochures. This has been a long process. This was the first time that Frank finally noticed, and it was the first time that he bought what we had to sell. And I said, and I'm telling you this not because I'm trying to embarrass Frank. I just want you to understand, selling is not like you send one brochure and then everybody buys.
Yeah.
That's not what it is. The reality is it's a process of persistence in which you approach people again and again and again with a different approach. Now, in a store situation, it's not like you're not going to wait 3 years before you finally sell something to somebody, but you are going to say, what about this? What about this? What about that? Tell me again about your job. Oh, wool seems like it would be better than polyester, and on and on and on. There's a number of touches, a number of attempts before the person's going to be ready to buy. Yeah. And, that's a really important thing, that in most cases, it's very rare that somebody gets a yes on the first ask. Very rare.
That was such a great lesson for his people, though, because that brought it really home. Here's this person that the company is paying for me to hear, and it took him 17 times to get here. So I think that really makes it come alive for them.
Yep.
Well, and when I did that, when we had our first company, and I was making cold calls, I joined the chamber and I targeted a size of company that I wanted to target, and I just started calling. And like I said, this was 1990. Now I don't know, maybe it's because I'm older and I'm not, there's a great thing about being ignorant when you're younger. You're not as afraid because you're like, whatever. But I don't know if it's because I'm older and more cautious, or if it's because I've worked as a web developer and web strategist for so long that most of my world is internet. I'm more cautious about making cold calls. I'm not afraid to, but I feel like nobody wants to talk on the phone anymore. And I know when I get phone calls, I hang up. If I don't know who it is, I don't even answer, and I guess I'm projecting what I do onto other people. What advice do you have about that, other than suck it up, buttercup?
Yeah. Well, I don't love cold calls any more than anybody else does. And there is that rare breed out there. We've got some friends in the sales profession who just think cold calling is the greatest thing in the whole world. And well, good, then you should have that job. And it's not what I'm interested in. On the other hand, we do have to make first contact.
Yeah.
And, a lot of the times we're calling a company that we've never done business with before. And we want to do maybe nothing more than find out who's the correct person to mail, to mail a package to. So it's got to start somewhere. But I will tell you, this may not be the answer to the question exactly the way you're asking it, but I think it's an important thing for people to understand. Again, if people think that the job when you're calling somebody is to try to get somebody who should not have what you've got and convince them to buy it, even though it's a mistake, then you're missing the point of the cold call.
Right.
The point of the call is to let somebody know if you've got a product or service that might solve their problem. And how do you find out about that without calling, without contacting? And so Andrea and I have a very, we have kind of unique take on this. And our take is, when we call companies, we're always trying to disqualify the buyer, not to qualify them. Qualifying is where, you call and you go like, hey, have you ever heard people when they're making a call? Hey, how are you today, Tom? My name's Richard. And, how's the weather there in Cincinnati? Oh, yeah. Okay. Wow. Orlando here. It's really hot. So anyway, let me just ask you, wouldn't you love to increase sales at your company?
No.
It's like, yeah, I mean, it's like, so they know already that the small talk is just small talk.
Yeah.
They know that the questions are the big setup, that you're trying to get them to say yes, get them to say yes. If I can just get you to say yes, right? Lisa, you do want to have a more beautiful lawn, don't you? Yeah. And Lisa, you would like to reduce your expenses for your watering by 22%, wouldn't you? And you're going, oh my God, oh God, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes. Well, we do the exact opposite. We call companies and we try to disqualify them. Hey, Tom, my name's, Richard Fenton. We offer this sales training program that we think you might be interested in. I just want to ask you, do you guys have meetings? Okay. So if they say no, I'm not going to try to convince a company who doesn't have meetings to start having meetings for me. We want to deal with companies who have meetings. And if they say no, we say, okay, great. Thanks a lot. Bye. I mean, there's just no reason to continue. Oh, you have meetings. Do you ever bring in speakers from the outside? If they go, oh no, we always use vendors, or I do all the sales training myself. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to try to convince them to get rid of their old process and replace it with me. Okay, bye. And then we say, do you have a budget for speakers and trainers? I don't want to convince somebody who has no budget that they should suddenly run around trying to find money.
Right.
So when they say, yeah, we have a budget, now I'm ready to actually start selling. And so I've gone through this whole thing doing what's best for them and me, which is to try in 30 seconds to see if it's a bad fit, so I can get off the phone and save them time and save me time.
Right. Get on to the next one. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I love that chapter in the book too. And look, y'all, the people in the audience, this is one of the things that I love about the book. It's very short, anecdotal stories. Everyone has a key takeaway. So when they say no, everyone is, when they say no, don't argue or attack. And let's see, sorry if I can turn the page. When they say no, respect their decision. When they say no, don't be desperate. But everyone is a story behind it. And stories to me are what makes something come alive and helps people learn what you're actually trying to convey to them.
Right. And more people should sell with stories. Story selling. I think there's even a book out by that title. Story selling is a very, very important approach. And, you can call it a story where you're telling a beginning and a middle and an end. Oh, I understand, Tom. We've had, I had this customer once who had the same problem you do, but I explained to them why they should X, Y, Z. And they're so happy with us now, that they use the service. I'm telling a story rather than just saying, you should do this, don't make, buy it. But also when people tell stories, there's word pictures create pictures in your head.
Yeah.
And we think in pictures. We don't think in words. You know, if I say the word clown, you know, you don't go C-L-O.
I
You get a
go,
picture.
"Ah,"
Yeah,
like
you get
clowns.
it right. I don't like clowns either. But you get a picture of a clown in your head. Or I say horse running through a meadow. You get a picture of a horse. You don't write it out. Now, I
Yeah.
don't know if your horse is brown or white or spotted, if it's big, if it's small, if it's running fast or slow. I do know this, though. You got a picture in your head. And when you tell stories and you use story pictures, people can't help but to follow along. You know,
Yeah.
I remember one day I was at working at Macy's at the time, and this person came in and said, you know, oh, I love that vase. How much is it? And, you know, I looked at the price tag and I said, it's $399. Oh, it's way up outside of my budget. And I said, yeah, I understand. But God, imagine what it'd be like next time you have a party and everybody walks in the door and the first thing they see is
Yeah.
that vase. And the woman went,
They bought it.
okay, I'll take it. So, you know, looking at that didn't do it, but the picture of what that would be like did it. But it also, the reverse becomes true. If she doesn't buy the vase, when people walk in, she knows she doesn't have it.
Yeah.
And so, is that manipulative? I don't think so. She wanted that vase.
She did want it. She just wanted to get it and not feel guilty about it.
She needed some encouragement. She needed some encouragement. And everybody sometimes needs a little nudge off the fence of indecision. And again, it's probably the fifth time I've said it, is whose interest are you acting in? I knew she wanted it.
Yeah.
And so it was in her best interest that I gave her the nudge.
Yeah. One other thing that I want to talk about, and this is about y'all and y'all's business. You know, everybody thinks about niching down and they're like, oh, I have to niche down, but I'll lose all these potential clients. And the fact is, you can niche down by doing something very specific within your field. Y'all aren't teaching people how to sell, how to make cold calls. You know, you're not going out and teaching the world of sales. You have a very specific thing that you focus on. And I think that's a really good lesson for people in finding a way to figure out a thing to settle on.
You do need to find out what your exact niche is and how you fit in within an industry, within the world. You know, in our particular case, we looked at it and we said, okay, do we want to be specialists in a particular industry? Do we want to do real estate, insurance sales, banking, retail? You know, what industry do we want to work in? Well, we could do it that way. Or do we want to do it for a position? We could do presidents and CEOs or vice presidents or sales managers or frontline salespeople. So we've got these industries going this way. We've got the positions going this way. And we said, what are we really selling? In our case, the niche is problem solution.
Right.
It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter what your title is. The problem is people have a fear of failure and rejection. The solution is to reprogram the way you think about hearing the word no, so that it becomes a positive rather than a negative in your life.
Yeah.
And so we found this little tiny niche, but what that meant was that when companies say to us, oh, like you said, you know, we don't do full sales training. So do you guys have like a 7-step? Nope.
Yeah.
You know, so you don't do sales training? Nope. We are STP. We are the additive to the engine that goes along with the gasoline. We don't make cars. We don't sell gas. You know, we don't fix your carburetor. This is what we do. We do this one little additive that will make everything else perform better. So when you figure that out, it can be very powerful.
Yeah, and it's this tiny, tiny little niche, but it's applicable to everybody, and y'all own it, you know?
Well, thank you.
I mean, seriously, in my opinion, y'all own it. So,
oh, thank you.
Okay, Richard, I'm going to say one last time. The first book is called Go for No. The second one is When They Say No. They're both excellent. They also have training programs, and I've actually done one, I think it was 10-day challenge or something with Andrea back around the beginning of the year. So they have lots of other stuff, but start with the books. Go get them. And Richard, tell them how they can find out more about y'all.
Yeah, well, to get the books, the best and easiest place is Amazon. Go to Amazon.com, go for no, or when they say no, just type them in, they'll pop right up. And the nice thing about Amazon is they do free shipping. So if you've got Prime, it's the logical way to get it. You can also get it from our website though, if you want to, and that's at goforno.com. And when you're in the website, you can watch Andrea and I, doing a part of a presentation live in front of a big audience. There's a quiz in there that you can take, a bunch of things that you can do. And so, feel free to visit there. And if you want to reach out to us for any reason, just write us at info@goforno.com.
Info@goforno.com, y'all.
Right.
Richard, do you still have the assessment that we did, the original digital one all those years ago?
Absolutely. And that is the quiz. And
y'all need to do it.
We've never changed it.
I love it.
Yeah, it was simple and people love it. So, and it's free. And it's free.
Yeah, I highly, highly recommend that y'all do that on their site. The Go for No assessment. It will really help you understand yourself, and you will not only get your score, but you'll get feedback on like ways that you can help yourself, right?
Right.
It's been so long since I've seen it, but I always remember working with Andrea on that all those years ago.
Yep.
So, Richard, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I've enjoyed talking with you so much, and I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. It was fun, and you are a delight, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Tell
You're
Andrea
welcome.
I said hi too.
I will.
See y'all later. And I have a special episode this Friday at 5 o'clock with my friend Tim Doherty, who is a financial analyst who was really interested in biotech stocks. And 3 years ago, we talked about, you should start a biotech podcast, which is exactly what he did. And that helped him work on his niche. So he's going to join me at 5 Friday for a special episode. So thanks, y'all. See you later, Richard.
Bye.
Bye-bye.